Welcome to the Agatha Christie in Devon podcast. I'm Matt Newbury.
And I'm Sophie Pearce. And this podcast is all about the places in Devon that Agatha loved and inspired her. And today we are by the sea at beautiful, mysterious, enigmatic Burgh Island. And we're actually on the mainland, looking out over to the island with the hotel, which is so distinctive. It's white with green windows and a green little roof. An Art Deco fantasy, isn't it really? And there's the Pilchard Inn just in front of it as well, which is a great contrast to a really old pub. And this is a place that Agatha came and where she was inspired to write two of her most famous books while staying here. And Then There Were None and Evil Under the Sun.
And it's just quite exciting coming down here. So we drove over the top and there's a golf course, and you can imagine the bright young things coming down in their convertible cars, driving down to the party island. And actually Burgh Island is sometimes referred to as a part-time island because it's cut off by the tide at high tide twice a day, but there is a strip of sand you can walk out to the hotel on a low tide. But it's high tide now, Sophie. How are we going to get there?
Well, there is this most extraordinary contraption, I suppose, called the sea tractor. And actually, when we arrived, it was on the other side of the island, and it's now disappeared. So I think it's on the way to pick us up as we speak.
Yeah, so this was devised in the 1930s when the island first became really popular, and it's now in its third generation. And this particular one is called Trundle, and it was built in 1969 by Robert Jackson, CBE, and he was basically a nuclear scientist. And he built this thing, and it cost about £9,000, but he just asked for a case of champagne instead of being paid. So that kind of fits the decadent feel of this island, doesn't it?
How about that for my next payment, Matt? I think that would be quite good.
Pay you champagne. It might have to be Prosecco, Sophie.
Well, shall we venture down to get on the tractor?
I'd love to.
So we're walking down the slipway, and the waves are quite vigorous this morning, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to swim that, would you?
No, and there's the sea tractor there, so looking forward to getting on. Okay, well, we're going to brave it. We've got to walk up a very rickety ladder, Matt, onto this sea tractor.
Between the waves, Sophie.
My name is Robin Chambers. I'm one of the sea tractor drivers, one of four, and we cross the causeway every time it's 3 hours to high tide and beyond, all the way until the tide parts, and then we use the 4x4 vehicles to get guests from the island to the mainland.
So how on earth do you end up doing a job driving this absolutely extraordinary contraption?
I live relatively local, and I'm sort of semi-retired, so I've always wanted to do this, drive the sea tractor. I see it, I've been watching it near enough every day for a number of years, and I just wanted to have a go to see what it was like. And now I'm hooked.
So I've seen video online of some quite choppy crossings. Have you had some quite hairy moments?
Yeah, we have. There's a lot of energy in the water, especially this year. Especially last year. And we've had some large swells with some high winds. And the art really is to avoid any of the guests and the passengers getting wet. But the challenges are quite high. You've seen this morning, you can get caught by a cheeky little wave from the east just when you think it's safe. So you have to have your wits about you to try and avoid those heavy waves.
Presumably the sands must shift all the time.
Yes.
Is that something you have to be aware of as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what you're going to get. When the tide parts, sometimes you have beautiful flat sands. Sometimes you'll get a sandbar that will emerge, especially on the island side. We had that for about 3 weeks. And then, incredibly, it will disappear, after a rough sea overnight. So yes, you always have to check early in the morning to see whether it's safe to cross, because you can get potholes which are quite deep.
So this is known as quite a decadent party island. Have you transported people along in all their regalia and sort of dressed up and trying to keep them dry?
Absolutely, yes. It's never a good hair day on a tractor, so we apologise in advance for the state they're in when they arrive. But they're normally in good spirits, and most of them quite believe that the sea tractor is part of the whole island experience, so they're quite happy to do it.
Well, we're now walking up to the main gates of the hotel on this beautiful island, where it's now quite calm actually after that rather windy crossing. And there actually are 3 houses on the island as well as the hotel, and also a pub, the 14th century Pilchard Inn.
Yes, there's a whole theory that there was once a monastery here, and the ruins of that monastery are under where the hotel is now, and the Pilchard Inn would have been guest accommodation. Many years ago in the 1890s, a musical star bought the island and he built a little house on here, and he used to have wild decadent parties. And then in 1927 somebody called Archie Nettlefold, who was an eccentric filmmaker, he built the current hotel we see today, the Art Deco hotel, and he had lots of theatrical friends and they used to come down and party quite hard, I think. So I think that it was that bright young things generation.
Absolutely, and I think it's something that the hotel today very much sort of tries to keep that tradition going. They have black tie dinners, they're quite formal, and we've been speaking to the current owner, who is Giles Fuchs.
I've read a lot of Agatha Christie. I'm going to say it wasn't my primary focus when I saw the island, but I didn't know the history when I arrived. I didn't know it, but when I arrived, and of course understood its connection. So afterwards, yes, it's hugely exciting to be tied to Agatha Christie and her writing novels on the island, in the beach house, which is our primary suite, as you know. And of course, she is the best-selling author after, well, I guess you can't say the author of the Bible because there are many, aren't there? But as I understand, it is best-selling. Her books are the best-selling books after the Bible. Is that right?
Yeah, the Bible and Shakespeare, and he was a playwright, so I think she's the best-selling novelist ever.
All right,
So,
we can go with that. I mean, astonishing. And I want to say 68 books. Is that right?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Don't put me on the spot.
So I now love the connection, and of course we have the Agatha Christie Society have had lunches here, and they are welcome, of course. And we have many. I was talking to a couple of guests in the Palm Court, our very, very glamorous cocktail bar, as you know, and they were from Australia, and they'd come here because of Agatha Christie. So it's a great thing to be part of.
Yes, I mean, the festival, which was just a couple of weeks ago, there were several people that we spoke to who'd been here, Americans, and because of the Agatha connection. So it's a very powerful connection to have.
Yes, it absolutely is, and I think we hardly have any foreign guests here. I mean, we do have a splattering of Americans, and we've just said an Australian and some Dutch people the other day. But amazingly, I don't think we've got the message out to the wider world about the Agatha connection. But we will. I mean, we're already, as you know, full most of the time. So, but we need to get that message out to the wider world of the lovers of Agatha Christie.
So this has been known as a party island for over a century. Have you had any decadent nights here yourself?
I couldn't possibly say, man. I've had many. But we do have a saying, which is what goes on the island stays on the island.
Well, walking into the hotel, I mean, you're just stepping back in time. It is beautifully Art Deco. Everything is in keeping with the 20s and 30s, and we're going to have a little explore soon. But first of all, Matt, how did Agatha make that connection with this place?
So she was invited here by Archie Nettlefold, and he owned the Comedy Theatre, which is now the Harold Pinter Theatre, and lots of her plays had been performed there, so they had this connection. So she was invited down here, and then she was inspired by the island, so she wrote And Then There Were None, which is a remarkable book. It's the best-selling crime fiction novel of all time. I think it's the 6th best-selling book in any language in the entire world. It's huge. It's all about 10 people invited to an island very similar to this, and they get killed off one at a time. So it's a remarkable book, and a remarkable place to be inspired by.
My name is Vlad Kupra, and my role is Director of Guest Relations and Concierge here at Burgh Island. This is my 17th year, so I've been here now for quite some time. So it really feels like a family here for us. So because I've been here for 17 years, I know so many of them, and some of our guests, they've been coming for 3 decades. So it is very special for us. And I think the great measure for any hotel is just to see guests returning, and they're very proud to retaining and kind of bring this number so high.
And how many people do you think come to the hotel because of the Agatha Christie connection?
The number is huge. So it is either combination why people come into this hotel. So a large proportion it is Agatha Christie from all around the world. I would say we've got a room or the place when she used to stay or she used to enjoy, which we actually named after her. It is called Agatha Christie Beach House. So guests, they've got the opportunity to sit behind the same desk or sleep in the same bed where Agatha Christie came to stay with us. This island inspired her.
I'm fascinated by how you run a hotel on this island where obviously, you know, you're cut off twice a day. I mean, things like deliveries and all those sort of practical stuff, that must be quite a challenge sometimes.
Well, it is kind of practical challenge for us. By running the hotel for so many years, we find our ways how to run this hotel efficiently, even with tides. Because the sea charter cannot run in all weather conditions. So we've got a certain guidance by the Coast Guard, so we're working with them very closely. But it's one of those experiences just to come across on a sea charter. This is why we need to have some bases on the mainland, so when the food is stored for us, and then we've got a special set of drivers who brings this over to the island, and because we've got in a way 2 or 3 sets of drivers. So one set of drivers, they are specializing on chauffeuring our guests to the hotel, so they are prioritizing our clientele and bring them over to the island. And then we've got other set of drivers they're focusing on deliveries and the other aspects of the operation. It's a very unique environment. It's unlike any other hotel.
Well, let's have a little explore, Matt. So we're just, in the hall really, with beautiful parquet flooring, lots of old black and white photos of the hotel and memorabilia of all sorts.
There's some Agatha Christie stamps there. I've just seen some vintage frame bathing costumes I wouldn't mind trying out.
And you can probably hear the music, and we're just approaching the beautiful Palm Court bar, which is flooded with sunlight today.
So it's got like this peacock domed roof that's incredible, isn't it? And it's got arched windows around that, real Art Deco style with incredible views, and the sun is shining through the windows. We've got the restaurant next to us with its black and white flooring. And right at the rear is the HMS Ganges, part of the old boat that's been built into the back of the restaurant, so you can have a little drink there.
And of course, one of the main parts of the hotel is the ballroom, where everybody dresses up in black tie every night for dinner. Doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday or a Monday or anything. Formality is part of this place. And so we're just going to walk up, have a quick look in the ballroom.
We're just going up the steps, and it's a beautiful, again, Art Deco curved ceiling.
Walking in, the thing that really strikes you is these beautiful, they're murals, aren't they, showing all the characters of the hotel. There's the former owner, Deborah Clark, and her husband. Vlad is there.
Yeah.
In the picture.
And outside, you've got an outside dance floor as well. So on a nice evening, you could go and have a little bit of dance with the view and the stars next to you.
Oh, lovely. Well, Matt and I are very, very keen to see the Agatha Christie Beach House, I think it's called. We're just walking through the lovely Palm Court bar and out onto the terrace with the most amazing sea views and looking down to the mermaid pool. And going down a little wooden staircase. So we're coming to a little wooden house on a platform literally just above the sea. And Giles is just taking us in. Wow. So she actually stayed in this very building?
It was slightly different then. It's been extended. You can see pictures up in the hotel in our hallway, but it's slightly altered. But in essence, exactly, yes, she was here in this. In fact, at that typewriter, no, I'm really joking.
But the typewriter probably is there in homage.
It is there in homage. It certainly is, and there are books and paperbacks of her novels around here as well. But yeah,
I suppose it's just this perfect kind of secluded place, very close to nature, because you're a bit below the main hotel, so you're right in front of the sea and you can see the water and spur for the imagination, I suppose.
I think if you're a crime writer, particularly around murder, that essence of being totally alone, especially when the tide in, and as we were just saying on the way down here, and an angry sea smashing onto the rocks, and no way of getting off the island when the tide's in, of course, or very difficult to get off the island. You can't use a sea tractor because that's too dangerous. Maybe a boat, but that would be dangerous too. So the idea of murder and suspense, looking out of those windows when she was writing her books, is kind of obvious, one would have thought.
Well, we're just coming down to the mermaid pool, which is accessed by an incredible wooden staircase. And we're just coming down now, and it's a lovely little shingle beach. I mean, this is a really unique part of the hotel on the island, isn't it?
Yeah, so some of the famous guests, so people like Noel Coward would apparently sit on the diving board and sing his latest song he'd written, and Geralda, who was another singer, and then the in-house band, who were called Harry Roy and the Mayfair Four, used to be put onto the diving platform and in the middle of the pool where they'd play the music live, and some of the outrageous songs included My Girl's Pussy and She Had to Go and Lose It at the Astor.
And it's amazing because the diving platform's there still today, obviously not the same one, it will have been replaced, but it is like this little kind of bandstand in the middle of the water.
Yeah, back in the 1930s, so you and me have both swum around this island a few times in the past, but back in the 1930s, they used to organise an annual swim, and they would have waiters in black ties stood in rowing boats, and as you swam past each of the rowing boats, you'd be given a gin and tonic along the way.
I think we should revive that.
I think it might be a health and safety nightmare, but it sounds fun, doesn't it?
I know. Let's just wander along the beach a little way here. So it's amazing the way they've created this. So I don't know when exactly it was built, but it basically would have been a natural rock pool. So we're standing among the rocks here, and they just basically added some concrete to fill in the gaps, and so you now have this pool which is calm always because it's protected from the waves outside, and it's a very special place.
Hello, I'm Anthony Gulliver. I'm an ardent follower of Agatha Christie. I travel 4.5 hours to get here from home, and 4.5 hours back, obviously. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Was Agatha what first drew you to come to stay at Burgh Island?
Yes, it was, because it's I've read a lot of her books already, and then I saw Evil Under the Sun with David Suchet, and I thought, I've got to have some of this, especially with the tractor. So my wife and I were going to come for a wedding anniversary, but it never happened. Anyway, she's gone, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So I decided in March that if I don't do it now, I never will. And I started in March, and that was my slippery slope, really, because I got hooked. And here I am for the 6th visit.
I mean, it goes without saying it's such a magical place.
Oh,
but
it is, yeah.
Can you try and sort of articulate what it is about the magic and why you keep coming back?
Yes, it's a good question. It's the ambience of the place as well, and the history associated with it. I really enjoy the atmosphere because it's like a big family here, and everybody's friendly. I haven't been told to go away yet. And after you come a few times, you get a passport.
Oh, do you?
And you get it stamped.
Literally a passport?
Yes, literally. I have the passport. And it's you get little incentives after you've come a few weeks.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's good.
Well, it's nearly time for us to leave the island, and it's been so wonderful to explore this really, really unique and eccentric place. But I think it's important to point out that actually, you can walk all around the island. It's not just the buildings.
No, there's a network of pubs all around the island, and if you walk up to the highest points, you go up past a helipad, which is quite exciting, and then on the top there's the ruins of an old chapel that became a hewer's hut, and that's where fishermen would hue and cry when they saw a shoal of pilchards coming past. And then you can go exploring the island, and actually a really useful way of exploring the island is to grab a copy of Evil Under the Sun.
Which we happen to have here.
Yeah, so if you open right at the start of it,
yeah.
There's a map of what in the book is called Smuggler's Island, and the hotel's called the Jolly Roger Hotel, which sounds really Enid Blyton, but obviously this book's a little bit darker than Enid Blyton.
Yeah, and actually the map is really, really, well, it could be Burgh Island. I mean, it's got the hotel in the same place, it's got the bathing beach where the mermaid pool is, and points out coves like Gull Cove and Pixie Cove. But yeah, it's a Poirot novel, isn't it?
It's a Poirot novel, and actually Poirot's come to relax on this luxury resort island, but as with Poirot, a murder's never that far away from him. So a body of an actress is discovered on a beach on the far end of the island. So instead of relaxing, he ends up having to exercise his little grey cells.
And it was made into a film, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a BBC 2001 adaptation with David Suchet, was filmed at the hotel and on the island. And they used, for the beach and the cave, they used nearby Thurleston Cove, which you can actually see from here on a clear day. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit cloudy today, but we can definitely see over in that direction. So before we leave the island, we've got one more little feature to bring you, which is our What Christie Means to Me in 3. And this time we're featuring Tony Medawar.
When I was asked to explain what Agatha Christie means to me, I had to think quite hard. Obviously, first and foremost, her name is a byword for a great detective story. Some are among the greatest that have ever been written, and I am quite confident a few are the greatest that will ever be written. She also wrote some very entertaining thrillers. None I know is likely to trouble historians of that particular genre, but nonetheless, they are almost all great fun, very enjoyable. Christie also wrote for the theatre, including one of the top 3 greatest mystery plays of all time, Witness for the Prosecution. But for me, Agatha Christie means the discovery, my discovery, of the crime and mystery genre. When I was about 10 or 11. I can't remember exactly when, but I can remember exactly where. It was in the lounge of our flat in Hampstead in North London. I had come across a copy of a Caribbean mystery on one of the many bookshelves. It was the Collins Fontana paperback with that wonderful cover by Tom Adams. If you've seen that edition, you'll know just why it made an impression on a young reader. It's a painting of Major Palgrave's disembodied head, blazing out from a background that includes a clue to the mystery. Not that I realized that at the time. Once I saw that cover, I had to read the book. And once I read that book, I had to read more, and more, and more, until I had read all of the titles we had in the house. They were all Collins Fontana paperbacks, and all had a cover painting by the American-born artist Tom Adams. And after I'd read all of the titles I could find at home, I read the rest, all of which I found in our local library. I was insatiable. I had to read every single novel Christie had written, even the romances, and every single short story, and every single play, even the ones that hadn't then been published. I delighted in the details. I spotted links between novels and short stories, like A Pocketful of Rye, whose plot and some characters appear in an earlier short story. I realized that some novels, like Appointment with Death, were inspired by particular people that Christie had met, and I began to speculate about her technique, which I have always found fascinating. For instance, while not everyone would agree, it seems obvious to me that Christie sometimes wrote more than one book at the same time. Books like Curtain and Then There Were None. And I suspect that some of her later novels, like Endless Night, may have been written many years before they were published. That's why I'm really looking forward to the publication later this year of a new book by Christie biographer Jared Cade, Secrets from the Agatha Christie Archives, which promises to set out a new timeline of her publishing history, and hopefully it will also provide some insights about the order in which stories were written. That in particular has always intrigued me. In the 1980s, to fulfill what I don't mind admitting had become an obsession with Agatha Christie's work, I started looking for uncollected stories. I found several, and these were collected by HarperCollins in a book called While the Light Lasts. A few years ago, I came across Christie's first short story, or at least what I thought at the time was her first short story. That was called The Wife of the Kenite, and you can find it in the HarperCollins collection The Last Seance. And last year I found an even earlier short story, published before The Mysterious Affair at Styles, and hopefully that too will soon make it back into print, more than a century after its first and so far only publication. I'm also aware that Christie was writing stories for privately circulated magazines when she was a teenager, but these seem lost, with the only copy of the only known example of these stories, called An Episode of May the 1st, locked away in a private collection. So you will understand that Agatha Christie and her work are an endless source of fascination and frustration for me. Whether or not that makes her the Queen of Crime, I don't know. That's a title that in the 19th century was given to Lady Macbeth. I don't really care about that. All I know is that if you pick up almost any one of Agatha Christie's books, you will quickly find yourself lost in a world that will have you scratching your head and smiling at her ingenuity and good humour. To put it simply, Christie is, and always will be, the greatest writer of detective stories that the world will ever know.
Well, thank you, Tony, for that. Tony's actually an author and an editor, and he was my predecessor as the director of the Agatha Christie Festival.
Well, the tide has gone out now, and there's a lovely stretch of sand that we can walk back over to get back to the mainland. But yeah, it's been amazing to visit this extraordinary place.
And I think we should leave the final word with Agatha, and she's got a wonderful quote about islands in her book, And Then There Were None.
There was something magical about an island. The mere word suggested fantasy. You lost touch with the world. An island was a world of its own. A world, perhaps, from which you might never return. This podcast was recorded in Devon, England in October 2024 and is brought to you by the Agatha Christie Festival. It was funded by Torbay's local heritage grant scheme. This is a collaboration between Torbay Council, Torbay Culture and the English Riviera UNESCO Global Geopark, with investment from the National Lottery Heritage Fund.
Thanks to our guests Robin Chambers, Giles Fuchs, Vlad Kupra, Anthony Gulliver and Tony Medawar. Original music and design by Rob Hoskins at Design by Hoskins. Why not join us at the Agatha Christie Festival, which takes place on the English Riviera every September? Visit www.agathachristiefestival.com.